Kami-sama yo, I'll never forget the morning of May 18, 1943, standing on the deck of an American transport ship, entering San Francisco Bay, watching the harbor fill my entire field of vision with identical Liberty ships stretching from Alcatraz Island to the Golden Gate Bridge like a steel forest growing from the water itself. The Pacific breeze carried the smell of welding torches and fresh paint from dozens of shipyards. The sound of riveting guns echoed across the water like machine gun fire, and from somewhere in the distance came the music of American swing bands, Glenn Miller's In the Mood playing from radio speakers that celebrated industrial achievement beyond anything in Japanese experience. I was Petty Officer Second Class Kenji Torpedo Yamamoto, Imperial Japanese Navy, and after serving aboard the submarine I-16 during the attack on Pearl Harbor and 18 months of underwater warfare from Hawaii to the Aleutians, I thought I understood everything about naval production, about industrial capacity, about the mathematical relationship between shipbuilding and military power. My nickname came from my expertise with Type 95 torpedoes, and I'd personally helped sink 4 American merchant vessels using weapon systems that represented the pinnacle of Japanese naval technology. But what I witnessed during that May morning in San Francisco Harbor would shatter every assumption I'd held about American industrial capabilities, everything I'd been taught about Japanese naval superiority, and everything I believed about the strategic balance between the Empire of the Rising Sun and the United States of America. Those Liberty ships would teach me that we hadn't just attacked American naval forces at Pearl Harbor, we'd awakened an industrial giant whose production capacity exceeded Japanese capabilities by margins that made continued warfare mathematically impossible. My journey to that devastating revelation began on December 7, 1941, when I served as torpedo specialist aboard the submarine I-16 during the first wave of the Pearl Harbor attack. Approaching Hawaiian waters in the pre-dawn darkness, accompanied by the most powerful naval strike force in Japanese history, I felt absolute confidence that Japanese naval aviation and submarine warfare would establish permanent Japanese dominance in the Pacific within months. Americans are soft people who build pleasure boats instead of warships, Petty Officer First Class Hiroshi Tanaka had told our crew during final preparations for the Pearl Harbor mission. Their industrial production focuses on civilian luxuries rather than military necessities. One Japanese submarine is worth 5 American destroyers in any combat situation. This assessment seemed confirmed by our success at Pearl Harbor. American naval forces were surprised and unprepared, suffering devastating losses that eliminated most United States Pacific Fleet battleship strength in a single morning. Japanese naval aviation and submarine attacks achieved tactical surprise that validated years of training and strategic planning. My personal contribution was modest, but satisfying. I-16 sank 1 American destroyer and damaged a second using torpedo attacks that demonstrated Japanese underwater warfare superiority over American anti-submarine capabilities. The ease of our success reinforced every lesson we'd learned about American military weakness and Japanese technological advantages. The Americans had no effective defense against submarine attack, I reported to our division commander after returning from Hawaiian waters. Their anti-submarine warfare procedures are inadequate, their detection equipment is primitive, and their destroyer tactics are predictable and ineffective. This confidence was maintained during early Japanese victories throughout the Pacific, as Japanese naval forces systematically destroyed American, British, and Dutch positions from the Philippines to the Dutch East Indies. Everywhere Japanese submarines encountered American opposition, the results seemed to confirm Japanese technological and tactical superiority. But my first doubt about American capabilities appeared during operations near the Aleutian Islands in June 1942, when we began encountering American naval forces that demonstrated improved anti-submarine tactics and detection equipment that exceeded anything we'd faced during the early months of the war. These new American destroyers are different, observed Commander Saburo Watanabe, after a difficult engagement near Dutch Harbor, where American forces had nearly succeeded in destroying I-16 with depth charge attacks that demonstrated unprecedented accuracy. They're using detection methods we haven't encountered before, sonar equipment that can track submerged submarines at ranges exceeding our torpedo range. He was describing technological improvements in American anti-submarine warfare that indicated rapid learning and equipment development during the first year of Pacific warfare. But at the time, these improvements seemed like minor tactical adjustments rather than evidence of systematic American technological advancement. The true shock came during my final combat patrol in March 1943, when I-16 was damaged by American depth charge attacks and forced to surface near Attu Island, where we were captured by American naval forces that included equipment and personnel representing capabilities we'd never expected from supposedly inferior American technology. The American destroyer USS Worden that captured our submarine was equipped with radar systems that had detected I-16 while we were still submerged, sonar equipment that tracked our movements with precision that made evasion impossible, and depth charge launching systems that could deliver attacks with accuracy that exceeded anything in Japanese naval experience. Japanese submarine tactics are well known to American anti-submarine forces, explained Lieutenant Commander Robert Patterson during my initial interrogation aboard USS Worden. We've been tracking Japanese submarine operations for over a year, studying your attack patterns and developing countermeasures that neutralize your tactical advantages. His casual reference to systematic study of Japanese tactics suggested American naval intelligence capabilities that exceeded our own assessment of American learning ability and technological development. But I assumed this knowledge came from battlefield observation rather than industrial advantages that could produce superior equipment faster than Japanese industry could respond. My understanding of American naval capabilities began to change during the journey from Attu to American prisoner facilities, which provided opportunities to observe American naval operations and equipment that challenged my assumptions about relative naval strength between Japan and the United States. The convoy that transported Japanese prisoners to America included escort vessels that represented American shipbuilding capabilities I'd never encountered during combat operations. These weren't the handful of destroyers and cruisers that had survived Pearl Harbor. These were new ships, built during the war, equipped with advanced systems, and operated by crews that demonstrated professional competence equal to anything in Japanese naval service. "How many ships does America possess?" I asked the American sailor, assigned to guard Japanese prisoners during our Pacific crossing. "Sir," replied Seaman First Class Danny O'Sullivan, with the casual attitude Americans used when discussing their military capabilities, "the United States Navy has over 2,000 combat vessels currently in commission, with hundreds more under construction in shipyards from Maine to California." 2,000 combat vessels represented a fleet larger than the combined navies of Japan, Germany, and Italy, but such numbers seemed impossible by Japanese understanding of shipbuilding capacity and resource limitations. No nation could build naval forces on such scales while simultaneously conducting global military operations and maintaining civilian production. But during our trans-Pacific voyage, I observed American naval operations that suggested systematic capabilities exceeding anything in Japanese experience. Aircraft carriers conducting training operations with aircraft numbers that exceeded entire Japanese air groups, supply convoys containing hundreds of merchant vessels, naval bases with facilities that could service fleets larger than the entire Imperial Japanese Navy. "These numbers must be propaganda," I told my fellow prisoners. "No nation can build ships faster than they can be sunk, train crews faster than they can be killed, or maintain such operations across Pacific distances without unsustainable resource consumption." This skepticism was maintained until May 18, 1943, when our transport ship entered San Francisco Bay, and I witnessed American shipbuilding capabilities that defied everything I'd believed about industrial production and naval warfare. The first sight that challenged my assumptions was the Golden Gate Bridge, which represented engineering capabilities that exceeded anything in Japanese experience despite being built for civilian rather than military purposes. If Americans could construct such projects during peacetime, what could they achieve when their entire industrial capacity was devoted to military production? But the real revelation came as our transport ship moved deeper into San Francisco Bay, and the harbor revealed American shipbuilding activities that operated on scales previously unknown in human history. San Francisco Bay was filled with ships. Not dozens of vessels, as I might have expected from a major naval port, but hundreds of ships representing every category of naval and merchant construction: warships, transports, tankers, cargo vessels, landing craft, stretching as far as I could see in every direction. "Kamisama-yo," I whispered in Japanese. "There are more ships in this one harbor than exist in all of Japan." But what shocked me even more than the total number of ships was the systematic nature of American shipbuilding that became apparent as I studied individual vessels through binoculars provided by American guards who seemed proud to display their industrial achievements. Dozens of ships were identical, not similar, not variations on common designs, but absolutely identical vessels that had obviously been built using standardized production methods that allowed mass manufacture of complex ships with the same efficiency that Japanese factories used for building bicycles or radios. "Those are Liberty ships," explained Petty Officer Johnson, one of the American sailors guarding Japanese prisoners. "We're building them faster than German submarines can sink them. About 3 ships launched every 2 days from American shipyards. 3 ships every 2 days meant American merchant shipbuilding was producing over 500 vessels annually, while the entire Imperial Japanese Navy possessed fewer than 200 major combat vessels of all types. But Liberty ships were just merchant vessels. What about American production of warships, aircraft carriers, submarines, and other combat ships?" "Petty Officer Johnson," I asked, "this is only merchant shipbuilding. What about American naval construction?" His answer provided the first glimpse of industrial reality that would revolutionize my understanding of the Pacific War. "Sir, Liberty ships are built by civilian shipyards using mass production techniques. Military shipbuilding is separate and includes aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines produced simultaneously by Navy yards and private contractors. Simultaneous production of merchant and military vessels meant American shipbuilding capacity exceeded total Japanese industrial production across all categories. But if Americans could build ships on such scales, what about their capabilities for producing aircraft, tanks, weapons, and other military equipment? As our transport ship moved through San Francisco Bay toward the prisoner processing facility, I had opportunities to observe American shipbuilding operations that revealed systematic efficiency and production capabilities that challenged basic assumptions about industrial warfare. Shipyards lined the entire bay, each one building multiple vessels simultaneously, using assembly line techniques that allowed completion of complex ships in time periods that Japanese shipbuilders required for much simpler vessels. Cranes moved materials with mechanical precision, welding operations continued around the clock, and completed ships were launched at intervals that seemed impossibly frequent. "How many shipyards does America operate for naval construction?" I asked Petty Officer Johnson, trying to understand the scale of production I was observing. "Sir, the United States has major shipyards in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, New York, Boston, Norfolk, Charleston, Mobile, New Orleans, and about 40 other locations," he replied with the same casual tone Americans used when discussing their industrial capabilities. Total American shipbuilding involves hundreds of facilities producing everything from submarines to aircraft carriers. Hundreds of shipyards meant American naval production represented systematic utilization of continental industrial capacity that no other nation could match. But shipbuilding was just one aspect of American military manufacturing that included aircraft, tanks, weapons, and ammunition produced simultaneously across thousands of facilities. The mathematical implications were staggering. If Americans were producing 500 merchant ships annually, plus hundreds of warships, while simultaneously building aircraft and other equipment on comparable scales, then American industrial capacity exceeded not just Japanese production, but combined Axis production by enormous margins. During our processing at the prisoner facility, I had conversations with other captured Japanese naval personnel who'd observed American industrial capabilities in different theaters and contexts, all of whom reported similar conclusions about overwhelming American production advantages. American aircraft production exceeds Japanese production by factors of 10 to 1, reported Commander Minoru Genda, a naval aviator who'd been captured during operations near Guadalcanal. "They're building fighters and bombers faster than we can shoot them down, training pilots faster than we can kill them, and deploying air groups faster than we can destroy them. American submarine construction has expanded rapidly since Pearl Harbor," added Lieutenant Commander Tadashi Yamada, who'd served aboard I-class submarines in the Solomon Islands. They're launching new submarines monthly, while our submarine losses cannot be replaced due to resource limitations and construction capacity constraints. These reports confirmed that American industrial advantages extended across all categories of military production, creating systematic superiority that made Japanese victory mathematically impossible regardless of individual tactical successes or strategic innovations. But what impressed me most about American industrial capabilities wasn't just the scale of production, but the apparent quality of equipment and the systematic efficiency of manufacturing processes that could produce complex military equipment with reliability and precision that matched or exceeded Japanese standards. The Liberty ships I'd observed in San Francisco Bay weren't crude wartime substitutes built for quantity rather than quality. They were sophisticated vessels with advanced navigation systems, reliable engines, and structural integrity that suggested superior manufacturing capabilities rather than simple mass production. American shipbuilding, explained the civilian engineer who conducted our tour of prisoner facilities, combines mass production techniques with quality control standards that ensure every vessel meets performance specifications for reliability, safety, and operational effectiveness. This combination of quantity and quality meant American industrial production could sustain high-intensity military operations indefinitely while replacing losses faster than enemy forces could inflict them. Japanese industry could produce quality equipment in limited quantities, but couldn't match American systematic advantages in both production volume and equipment reliability. My education in American industrial capabilities continued during 18 months as a prisoner of war, providing opportunities to observe civilian production, infrastructure development, and technological advancement that supported American military capabilities while maintaining living standards that exceeded Japanese peacetime levels. American prison camps were supplied with equipment, food, and materials that demonstrated abundance underlying American military power. Prisoners received better nutrition than many Japanese civilians, lived in facilities that exceeded Japanese military housing standards, and had access to medical care that surpassed treatment available to Japanese military personnel. Americans waste more food in one day than Japanese families consume in a week, observed Petty Officer Tanaka, who worked in the camp kitchen and could compare American food abundance with Japanese wartime shortages described in letters from home. But this apparent waste actually represented systematic efficiency that ensured adequate nutrition for everyone, while maintaining surplus capacity that could handle unexpected increases in demand or supply disruptions. More significantly, American industrial workers in nearby factories were producing both military equipment and civilian goods simultaneously, something Japanese industry couldn't achieve due to resource limitations and production capacity constraints. American factories near this camp, reported Petty Officer Watanabe, who worked on agricultural details that provided opportunities to observe civilian industrial operations, are producing military trucks and civilian automobiles simultaneously, using the same assembly lines and workers for both military and civilian production. This systematic abundance meant Americans could afford to be generous with resources, equipment, and supplies in ways that Japanese forces couldn't match. American military operations were conducted with logistic support that exceeded Japanese capabilities by margins that made resource conservation unnecessary. But beyond abundance, American industrial systems demonstrated organizational efficiency and technological sophistication that maximized effectiveness of available resources through systematic planning, standardized procedures, and continuous improvement based on operational experience. American shipbuilding techniques, I observed during visits to San Francisco Bay, that were permitted as part of prisoner recreation programs, achieve production rates through modular construction, standardized components, and assembly line methods that Japanese shipyards have never attempted. These techniques allowed Americans to build Liberty ships in approximately 70 days from keel laying to launch, while Japanese shipyards required 60 to 12 months for comparable vessels using traditional construction methods that emphasized individual craftsmanship over systematic efficiency. The strategic implications were clear. American industrial advantages weren't temporary wartime achievements, but permanent characteristics of American economic systems that would continue after the war ended. Japan was fighting not just American military forces, but American industrial civilization that operated on scales that Japanese society couldn't match. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, I was repatriated with detailed understanding of American industrial capabilities that had made Japanese victory impossible, regardless of individual Japanese courage, tactical skill, or strategic innovation. We weren't defeated by superior American sailors or better American tactics, I reported to naval intelligence officers during debriefing in Tokyo. We were defeated by American shipyards, American factories, American production systems that could replace losses faster than we could inflict them. This assessment influenced Japanese post-war development, as leaders recognized that future Japanese security depended on industrial modernization and international cooperation rather than military confrontation with nations possessing overwhelming production advantages. Japanese naval reconstruction, I explained to post-war planning committees, must emphasize industrial efficiency and technological development that can achieve competitive capabilities through systematic innovation rather than individual excellence. The lessons I'd learned about American industrial might influence my post-war career as I worked to help modernize Japanese shipbuilding using systematic approaches observed during my captivity in American facilities. American assembly line methods, I explained to Japanese shipyard managers during reconstruction, achieve efficiency through standardized procedures, modular construction, and quality control that maximizes productivity without compromising performance standards. These methods contributed to Japanese industrial recovery and expansion during the 1950s and 1960s, creating shipbuilding capabilities that eventually competed successfully with American production while serving peaceful rather than military purposes. My correspondence with American naval personnel continued throughout the post-war period, providing insights into continued technological development and opportunities for Japanese participation in international cooperation that served mutual security interests. Kenji, wrote Petty Officer Johnson in 1950, "The Liberty ships you saw being built in San Francisco Bay are now carrying cargo for peaceful trade between America and Japan, demonstrating how industrial capacity can serve construction rather than destruction." This transformation of military production to civilian purposes provided hope that former enemies could become partners in addressing challenges that required industrial cooperation rather than military competition. In 1955, 12 years after witnessing American shipbuilding in San Francisco Bay, I was invited to visit the United States as part of a technical exchange program designed to share shipbuilding knowledge between former enemies who'd become allies. The visit provided opportunities to observe American industrial development that had continued to expand and improve since the war ended, creating capabilities that served global commerce while maintaining military readiness for collective security purposes. "Petty Officer Yamamoto," said Admiral Patterson, the former lieutenant commander who'd interrogated me in 1943, "American shipbuilding capabilities have continued to evolve since the war, but now they serve peaceful commerce and international cooperation rather than military confrontation." During that 1955 visit, I toured American shipyards that were building commercial vessels, tankers and passenger ships, using techniques developed during wartime military production, but adapted for civilian purposes that connected nations through trade rather than dividing them through warfare. But perhaps most importantly, I learned that American industrial capabilities were being shared with former enemies through technical assistance, technology transfer, and investment programs that helped rebuild industrial capacity that had been destroyed during the war. "The shipbuilding techniques you observed during wartime," Admiral Patterson explained, "are now being used to help Japan develop competitive shipbuilding industry that can contribute to international commerce and economic development." This cooperation created opportunities for Japanese shipbuilders to learn American methods while contributing Japanese expertise in quality control, efficiency improvement, and technological innovation that benefited both nations. My final assessment of American industrial capabilities, written in 1975, shortly before my retirement, acknowledged both the wartime achievement and its implications for international peace and cooperation. The Liberty ships that filled San Francisco Bay in 1943 represented not just overwhelming industrial capacity, but American commitment to using that capacity for construction rather than destruction when the purposes of war were achieved. This was my story, Petty Officer Second Class Kenji Torpedo Yamamoto, who learned that American shipbuilding capabilities exceeded Japanese imagination, that industrial warfare was decided by production capacity rather than individual technical excellence, and that former enemies could become partners when they recognized each other's contributions to peaceful development. My encounter with American Industrial might taught me that the 50 Liberty ships I saw in San Francisco Harbor represented systematic capabilities that made Japanese victory impossible, that modern warfare was decided by factories rather than battlefields, and that industrial capacity could serve peace as effectively as it had served war when applied with wisdom and cooperation. What struck you most about my witnessing of 50 identical ships in one American harbor? Have you heard similar accounts from veterans who were amazed by Allied industrial production capabilities during World War II? These personal testimonies help us understand how individual observations could reshape entire nations' understanding of industrial warfare and international relationships. If you want to hear more first-hand accounts like this one, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Tomorrow, we'll be sharing the story of Sergeant Major Antonio Silva, a Brazilian soldier who witnessed American logistics capabilities in Italy and learned how systematic supply operations could determine the outcomes of major military campaigns. These voices from the past deserve to be heard. Let's make sure their stories live on.